year everyone wants to be a part of.
Equals the Blues season record of 12 tries. It's all blue here at Eden Park, and the Blues are the first team through.
It is the Chiefs at home taking on the Reds.
Gets it away to Dyer. Trying to reach his way over. Peter Gasol-Kula has scored it. And the Chiefs march into the semi-finals.
So I'll just find the space in the middle and lucky enough to put it down.
The third quarterfinal, we're trying to find another semi-finalist.
Now to Jordan. Surely you can get through here. Well, Jordan, he does.
Blues next week, are you licking your lips?
Is it the Blues? Yeah. Shit, yeah.
The last of the sudden death quarterfinals.
50 seconds to go now. Playing for this season. Can't do it. They get over the line and they've got it down though. Oh, wow.
It's held up.
Brumbies win. Brumbies win.
Did you feel you definitely got that down?
I scored it, brother. I'm gutted, but honestly, brother, I'm just truly grateful and blessed, bro, to play this game for my club and my team. So, pretty special moment. But, yeah, it's good.
And then there were four. Tēnā koutou katoa, good evening and a welcome into the breakdown. Well, the top four teams have prevailed and showed why home field advantage is so important. Those three New Zealand teams have one last chance to impress the All Black selectors before we name the first squad of the year on the breakdown, this time next week. Gentlemen, great to have you back on the show. Jeff Wilson, Mills Muliaina, and of course, Carlton Ana. Welcome back to Sundays, KT. It's so good to have you here.
Oh, sick as Sundays, sick as Sundays.
Were the Hurricanes robbed in Ardie Savea? We saw the emotion on his face. We're going to jump into it straight away. What do you reckon?
Around, eh?
Did he get it down?
I thought he did. Honestly, I thought he did. That's a non-biased opinion, just obviously. But
you played for the Hurricanes?
No, just live there forever.
Forever.
Well, we'll take a look at the footage. Can you see grass underneath the ball or not? That is the question, right?
Yeah, I reckon they're that shot.
Mills?
Initially, when we were watching it back at the hotel, I needed a bigger screen. Like, I couldn't really see the ball there. Whether that white little wee bit there was an arm.
Yeah.
But Nick Berry was right there. And, you know, obviously he didn't see it. Ardie said that he got it down.
I think that last shot just shows it. I mean, yeah, the arm was around there, but you could, obviously the pointy end of the ball had to touch the deck unless you're a magician.
What do you reckon, Jeff?
Oh, well, the referee said it wasn't a try. And that's all that matters if you're the Hurricanes. I would look at a couple of things that happened before that, though, for me, I think are more important. And it was in the same play. And essentially, I think the Hurricanes should have had a penalty and they should have had another opportunity. Reality was, I felt they were offside before Ardie. And here's a carry, and there's a couple of things for me. There's a player lying in the ground for the first 10 rounds of this competition. He's been penalised for obstruction. Ardie Savea is obstructed before he picks up the ball. Just watch the player nearest on the near side of the post here. If he's in front of the line, he is offside on defence. So just watch as he comes forward. Just watch his feet. He's there. He's the guy who holds up the player. So he's offside. Now, that would have been the fourth penalty in the red zone. An attacking part of the field. We know what's happened there. Teams have been under warning, professional fouls, whatever it takes. I think they should have been afforded another opportunity. But in saying that, they're up by 8 points with about 10, 12 minutes to go. They had the game in their hands and they let it slip through their fingers. And I think ultimately, I think the Brumbies are going to come to New Zealand, have it all in front of them against the Chiefs. But I think they should count themselves very, very fortunate, the Brumbies.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a tough one to swallow, isn't it? If you're the Canes and it's ended your season. You saw how emotional Ardie Savea was at the end of the game. We don't usually see that from him.
Yeah.
Not that kind of emotion.
Especially the way they fought back, you know, especially in the second half to get that opportunity. And yeah, I'm with you. They should be able to close it out, but
we all thought we got it down. We all thought we got it down. I mean, he doesn't know. I actually think there's a hand still under there. Yeah. I think there's a hand. It's not clear grounding, which what it needed. In the end, the ultimate, Nick Berry said that he didn't see a grounding. Because he didn't see a grounding, that it was always going to be in favour of the Brumbies. Always.
I just think that's pretty substantial evidence on that last shot that we saw. That there's got to be, that point's got to be on the ground. I think you haven't got your proper specs on, so you didn't see it.
Wow.
But I'm with you, like that just to go back to that ruck, that point that you made, being in front of the ruck, I thought that was quite loose this whole weekend. Like, I don't think.
Talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it, I think, a little bit later on, but I think the referees, it was let go, it was very liberal.
Players are expected to be at their best in playoff time, aren't they? Everyone is at this time of year. It's time now to talk Super Rugby with Nurofen, available at Chemist Warehouse.
History very much in their favour. They've won their last 4 finals. They've not lost at Eden Park since 2014. The numbers are there, but Kieran can't make it. Hall puts it on the line. It's a try to Brett Hall. Look at Christie coming round. He's picked it up. He's in. The Blues are back in it.
What we're seeing out there actually is a result of the line-out, poor line-out from the Blues. You see this is after a mirror of possession.
And this is why Sam Whitelock is so valuable. Their line-out has driven their play in the first 40 minutes.
But they've turned it over, the Crusaders.
They're in control of the game right now, the Crusaders.
It's the Richie Mo show. David Harvelli, they're like Batman and Robin.
Oh, they certainly have. They really controlled the game.
Moonga lines up a drop kick. Again, the Blues, the kick, are in trouble. Not just to Seven Reese. Something out of absolutely nothing. And the dynasty continues.
Blues next week, are you licking your lips?
Is it the Blues? Yeah. Shit, yeah.
Is there a bit of hurt there? And revenge, maybe, that you need to get one back?
All I'm going to say is I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Dalton.
Thanks.
How does that not get you excited? The two captains of those teams already. Literally 7 days before these two teams clash, the Crusaders against the Blues Friday night will be must-watch. It'll be the end of an era for one of their two coaches who have both been at these franchises for a very long time. Rangi up against Razor. How are you not excited for this, Mills?
Just watching that.
There's bad blood.
Oh, there is. I mean, I think the Blues have been hurting for a very, very long time. And obviously the Crusaders have got, I suppose, you know, they've always backed themselves, but they've got a bigger challenge now in terms of the injury toll that's taken on their team. Yeah, and that's the thing, squad depth. But I just think this year in particular has really shown that that rivalry has always been simmering underneath. And as soon as that Crusaders-Blues game at Eden Park and the people that turned up for it, and now we take it up just a little bit more with the semi-final spot, it just gets spicy.
You know what happens when you sit in that seat? You're automatically, you're filling Sir John Kerwin's boots. So there's only one team you're supporting. There's only one team you could possibly be talking about. It's the Blues. And how good is it that he's not here? So we don't have to listen to it because they'll be going in as favourites. What I can say, though, is the context of this game has changed. Patrick Tuipulotu ruled out with a broken arm last week. Sam Whitelock is highly unlikely. Scott Robertson talked about the fact that he looks as though he's going to be ruled out, right? Yeah, it looks like the Achilles injury is incredibly niggly. We're waiting to hear the official word, but it sounds worse than expected. Because when you get to playoffs down in Christchurch, it becomes a case where what did they do on the weekend? It was against the Fijian Drua. It's up against suffocating them with scrum, with line-out and playing territory. So these two teams, remembering the last time they played, it was 15-3. 15-3 was they could only muster 3 points, the Blues, and this is what they did the last year. But there's no Sam Whitelock now, Mills, so all of a sudden, for me, this is a different contest. The Blues tried to use their scrum against the Waratahs as a weapon. The Crusaders used their scrum. Are we going to get a stalemate? Is that what we're going to get? Is it going to come down to single moments? I don't see a lot of points being scored in this game. No Sam Whitelock, no Patrick Tuipulotu. Do they just cancel each other out then? Oh, man, those are two big names that are out. And I guess when you look at the final last year, and particularly those clips, one man featured heavily, and that was Sam Whitelock, in terms of, you know, his ability to get and really disrupt the Blues, but also his leadership. You know, if he's not there on Saturday, that's a massive loss. The thing that's probably riding on the Blues' side is they've started to get it together. They only just started last week. I think they have. I think this is their best opportunity now to go down. They're hungry. They know they haven't sort of played as well as perhaps they should be playing, but I think they're starting to really sort of come together. Well, if you look at this, history tells you that no one goes down to Christchurch and wins a playoff games. The Crusaders are 28-0 over 27 years. No one goes down there and beats them. But what do you reckon? Are you in agreement with Mills, KT? This Blues team is different and the Crusaders are hurt. They're without 11 contracted players and counting. I mean, we saw Ethan Blackadder come onto the field and come straight back off again on the weekend.
I think that stat shows that it doesn't matter who's in that Crusaders jersey when it comes semi-finals time. They have a particular way they play. And I think that's probably the difference for them and why they've been so successful. But I just think with Millsy, along to agree with Millsy, I just think the Blues at the moment, they're finding ways to score and they're quite explosive, very different from last season. So I think that's going to be the thing. If anything's going to break it, I think it's going to be close, but I think the Blues have got that X factor that they can strike from anywhere.
You heard a guy named Richie Mo'unga? Have you heard of him before?
Right. Yeah, he goes on. There's a guy called Beauden Barrett who's won a couple of world.
Yeah, but on the biggest stage in Super Rugby, when the game's been on the line, and we saw it last year, the Crusaders, he put on a masterclass, controlled possession. When he got possession, put them in the right parts of the field. Their attack was on point. What is going to be different, though, the fact that it was about 0 degrees, and it was -2 this morning when we left.
It's probably going to be the same on
It's going to be the same. So all of a sudden, it's going to be more and more difficult to play any of that expansive rugby you're talking about and shifting the ball. They're going to need to have their kicking game on point. And that's the big challenge I see for Will Jordan playing fullback for the Crusaders, because Zahn Sullivan is going to do that for the Blues. Him and Beauden Barrett against Richie Mo'unga and Will Jordan, where they play this game and who they play this game and how they play it, with no David Havili to help with that load, I think that'll be significant in this matchup.
I think tactically now the Blues, like I mentioned before, I think they're getting their stuff together. Sullivan is excellent. He would give that little bit of point of difference in terms of getting them down the right end of the field. I think it's more upstairs, the mental side of things for them. They are hurting, but I think it's not a case where they go down there and they say, hey, this is a prime position for us to be in because the Crusaders are injured. They'll go down there and say they're even more dangerous when we go down there because of that reason, and we've got to make sure we're right on task. I mean, you remember the last time they went down, that was, Dalton's only come back. He got suspended after that game, so they're down with 14 men. The knock-on that happened before, they're close games. And so the Blues know that they are beatable. They won't, I know, man, they're really good down there, but far out. The Blues, I think, are starting to get things right.
Yeah, and I think they're quite fresh. Like you say, Dalton's just come off a couple of weeks break, so they're quite fresh. And
Nepo's the same. Nepo's the same.
Off starting to fire,
And so Tutu's had a bit of a rest too coming into this last part.
It's catching over on that side of the table.
I'm not saying
you guys have caught it. You've got the bug.
Obviously, it's going to be defence. Like, Crusaders are always going to lay their head on defence. I think they'll actually kick high a lot rather than long, whereas the Blues will kick long and chase. Whereas I think the Crusaders will kick high and challenge in that department. When you've got Will Jordan and the likes, you got to, right?
Well, how concerning do you think these injuries are for the Crusaders? They just keep on coming. They keep on coming. Obviously, Sam Whitelock would be the biggest, wouldn't it?
Every time you finish a game with 13 on the field,
13.
It's got to be concerning. But all of a sudden, it got to a point the game was comfortable. They didn't want to risk any players. But it is, when you lose like a Zach Gallagher, how much is that impact off the bench going to be significant? What are they going to have in depth? Because as we know, if it's tight, it's what you do in those last 20, 30 minutes is going to be critical. Guys like Christie, who was immense, has been immense all season for them. If they were to lose him, if Ethan Blackadder's not available, like I say, that's an area I think the Blues, when Segner's come on and done really, really well. Robinson was outstanding at line-out time against the Waratahs. They needed a target, a big target, and he stood up. And look, Hoskins Tutu, there's a lot of things to like about the Blues. But this is the Crusaders at home, and I think the critical part for me will actually be the first 20 minutes of this game. Is that if you step up, you stand up, and you make a statement early that there's nowhere you can dominate us, then the Blues will go a long way to winning them.
And they've got to. That's where the Crusaders really hit the draw. So that first sort of 10 or so minutes. But the thing is, they've got quality players. They've got world-class players, the Crusaders. Cody Taylor's starting to step up. You move down. You mentioned Christie. You mentioned, even Drummond. Mo'unga. But they've never been in a position like this where they're actually scraping it together to get those experience in finals football, and that's probably in the back of their minds. They'll be thinking, okay, well, how much more do these experienced players have to give, because it's going to take a toll on them.
You two have already mentioned some of the refereeing decisions over the weekend. Will that play a part in the semi-finals? Do you think a game or a moment is going to be decided by a decision? Jump in, Jeff.
Hold on. But I'm actually going to say it's not about the decisions that are made. It's the ones that haven't been made. Because at this time of the year when things tighten up, remember those games where there was space and it was clean at the breakdown? It's not going to be clean at the breakdown, because all of a sudden we're playing in different conditions. And so for me, and I've mentioned this to them, is the fact that players going off their feet, when we've allowed a game to be played with your hands, then all of a sudden entry into breakdowns, getting yourself in good, strong positions. But to me, the sealing off of possession, given we're playing in slipperier conditions, teams are now wanting to hold on to the ball so they can get penalties and look for possession. Just watch players going off their feet, sealing off possession. It's supposed to be a contest. Tamaiti Williams here, flopping over over top of the player. This is not a legal play. Same thing again, Will Jordan coming in from the side. I think for me the breakdown all of a sudden has become hotly contested, been more and more difficult for the referees to adjudicate, and now there are a number of things for me which are going to slip by the wayside. This here, there's players off their feet everywhere. This is an absolute mess. This is what pressure does. This is what, when you're not being able to move your footwork to get beyond the advantage line. Just watch some of this, and I think the Brumbies have gone back to the 90s. Look at that guy flopping over the top. Come here, look at this. Watch this once again. Sealing off, going to deck. No way you can contest possession. That's not the way this game was refereed in the first 12, 14 rounds of this competition. Look at that there. Geordie Barrett not in position, on his feet, sealing off. For me, if that's the way it's going to be going forward, it's going to suit the teams that aren't named the Chiefs, because the Chiefs are the one team who want to play. Yep. They're the one team that want to get the ball off the ground. They're the one team that want to get on the ball. If you're in that position and it's not contestable, I think it'll have a huge impact on the game. And what you can't do is from minute 1 to minute 80, it has to be the same. It can't change. You can't decide in the course of the 80 minutes to all of a sudden pick something up and go, because the people at home and I will be very frustrated at that. You've set a standard on this. That's the way it has to be going forward.
And just talking on that point with the Chiefs, like that's exactly what the Reds did to them at that ruck time and slowed them down so they couldn't get it wide. They were good enough a couple of times to execute, but that's exactly the game plan they went with. But I think in terms of the semi and the Crusaders and the Blues, I think that's what makes the Crusaders so dangerous, because they adapt to that situation so well, quickly or quicker than a lot of other teams. You know, and by the time when they get the momentum, it's half the other team to get back. In terms of that domination at the ruck, so I think that's going to be a key area, whoever adapts to the refereeing style first.
The big thing for me is I hope it doesn't come down to a refereeing decision. You know, these finals.
Already has.
And I know what you just looked at, even I was confused. Well, I mean, who do you want to reward? Are you wanting to reward the attacking side? Are you wanting to reward the defensive? Because there's so many thousand things in that one ruck that you can see penalised. So what I don't want is the referees watching this, and hopefully they don't, and go, well, I'm going to ping the house down, and we're just going to slow the whole game down. I think the focus really needs to be on guys staying on their feet.
Reward the people that are on their feet, Mills.
And so that's an
legally,
that's an attacking sense rather than defensive effort. Because on those, what we're sort of seeing there, you could easily ping both sides, and that's where the confusion's coming. And what are the referees actually focusing on when it gets to that point? I mean, inside the 5 metres when you're on attack, they focus on the fact don't seal the ball off. They've gone away from that. Now gone away from that. Okay, so start pinging that again. If you're out in the open, well, hey, let's start rewarding some of the open, the attacking play. You know, the guys that are actually broken through and winning that fast ball.
I'll be honest though, like the Reds Chiefs game and
it's a good game.
It was a good game. It was an awesome game. I thought Angus Gardner actually went pretty well. You know, and I think he was fair for both teams, and it ended up being a banger. So I didn't mind it whatsoever. Like to your point, as long as they did that from the start to the finish, then the players can play off that and adapt to that and make that a contest. You can't change halfway through. So I think in terms of that, like as long as they know, and I thought that Australian group in particular did a very good coaching.
They've gone off at the referees, haven't they? It's just like you go after the thing is we're speeding up the game. The key was speeding up the game. Anyone in the back of your ruck, when you've got the attacking ball, they've got to attempt to get out of the way. So ping them. Start pinging them again like they did at the beginning of the year. Don't give them the leeway to hang in there and say, oh, actually, guys are trying to, you know.
Just because it's a playoff game.
Exactly.
Sorry, I know you're trying to get in.
Yeah, can we stop talking about the referees and start talking about the action? KT, you were in Hamilton yesterday. Two teams had an easy quarterfinals, you could say. Another two had it tough, the Chiefs and the Brumbies. The Chiefs still in the box seat. I mean, Clayton McMillan said for a whole number of reasons they were put under pressure, but he thinks that'll be good for them in the long run. Mm-hmm. And they're at home, remember? They were number one on the table.
Yeah, and they found a different way to win. You know, the Chiefs have been doing it easy, have been scoring a lot of tries, but they had to just aim up physically, and that was a banger of a game. That took me back to old school. Actually, I shouldn't probably... No, I won't say it, but it felt like a state of origin. Like, they were just smack, 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 and no one took a foot back, a step back, and that's what I liked about it. You had to win that physical battle. You had to win the middle of the park, and they did that, and they were just able to, under stress, still get the dub. And I think in finals football, that's what gets you there, is that physicalness and owning that part.
Couple of players who really stood up once again. It's the names that are on everyone's lips when it comes to these All Black selections. Shaun Stevenson, Emoni Narawa were huge, Mills.
I love it. Yeah, the thing is, you talk about, you know, the physicality, you know, the guys are showing, but also when you come to big games, that those guys that haven't been in the All Black have got the ability to step up, you know, defensively on an attack. They've been doing it this whole year, right? And so they definitely have. I think, you know, they've been real X factor in terms of what they do. Their kicking ability. The back three, you know, the variety they've got and the guys they've got back there, Jeff. I mean, they're probably the best sort of in terms of versatility in that department.
this was the best way, in my view, for them to deal with pressure. And when it comes to big games and you want to find out what players are capable of, the likes of Shaun Stevenson, who are getting considered for the next level, their decision-making, their accuracy, the impact they can have on the game. Look, this Reds team, I think, matched up really, really well in a lot of key areas, and they were desperate, and they made some remarkable try-saving plays, and the Chiefs didn't quite finish as well as they would have liked to. They created plenty of opportunities. The Reds just hung in there, but to Clayton McMillan's point, I think that's perfect preparation, because you had to keep your composure when quite easily it would have been quick to think we could be going out as the #1 seed. They didn't clearly go down that path. And their experience, and I'll say it again and I'll keep saying it, that's why Sam Cane is such a valuable leader.
How do they pick their starting loose forward trio? Peter Gus wasn't supposed to start yesterday, played the full 80 and was one of the standout players. How do they actually pick between Finau, Jacobson? Kane's obviously there already.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, Luke Jacobson, unfortunately, he was a bit crook, so he couldn't go, but he's been awesome. But I'm with you. I watched Sammy Cane, that first, 30-odd minutes. He made some outstanding runs, under pressure, had to track all the way back, I think about 2 metres from his line, got the turnover, and then was the first man to hit it up off that. Some of the things he's doing at the moment, he looks fresh, he looks fit. I think he's looked like a monster at the moment, Sammy Cane. He was unreal.
That's great for the Chiefs and great for the All Blacks, isn't it? Just before we move on, can we mention Brad Thorne, 6 years at this Reds team, and he's decided to finally take a break from rugby for the first time in about 40 years, I think.
Forever. I had a good chat to him down in Dunedin before they played the Highlanders. It was a heartbreaking loss. I felt from then I was grateful he got one more week, and he actually prepared this team and they played a remarkable game. They were within 10 minutes of possibly going to a semi-final. I think he'll refresh, take a little bit of a break. He deserves it. There are some frustrations that he went into with Australian rugby and their ability to compete and get better. That's a conversation for another night.
Plenty of jobs in New Zealand.
No, I don't. I think the jobs might be running out. I think they're running out. Really? Maybe not.
Have you got some news for us, Jeff?
No, not at all. I just think they may be getting closer here in Auckland. They think they're getting closer.
They got their man, you reckon?
I think they're getting closer. I'm not going to say anything. What's that?
One name.
Take it out there.
I can tell you one name. It's not Sir John Kerwin. If you are the Blues, right now, it's not Sir John Kerwin. He's not here. It's not because he's coaching the Blues.
I was going to, so you wouldn't see
He was going to bring me in. I thought I was going to make a comeback, me and him. Skills coach right over there. I don't know what. Definitely not defence. Definitely not defence.
No.
Hey? And we've got media marketing right here. We're sorted. Yeah. You want us?
Happy on the breakdown. I love working Sundays. Time now for our Form 15 of the Super Rugby Pacific quarterfinals. This one was picked by New Zealand's Test captain, our Test cricket captain, Tim Southee. Now, he is a Chiefs man, but he's picked a fairly even team. This is what it looks like. He's gone for Ufa Tuangafasi, Cody Taylor and Nepo Lalala. Tom Robinson, Brodie Retallick in the second row. Devin Flanders, Sam Cane, Ardie Savea, which he will justify at number 8 shortly. Cam Roigard, Richie Mo'unga. Bryce Heem, Rieko Ioane and his back three of Leicester Whainganuku, Mark Talia and Shaun Stevenson. Very familiar look about this team. We've seen majority of these names pop up every single week, haven't we? Here is Tim telling you exactly why he's picked these players.
Another great round of Super Rugby Pacific quarterfinals, business end of the season. It's great to see 3 New Zealand sides through to the semi-finals, so it should be a great weekend next weekend. I had the grueling task of trying to pick a Form 15 from the quarterfinals, and it was great to see a few old faces and experienced guys stepping up at the business end of the season, as well as some young guys that have shown throughout the season how great they've been, and to see them do that in the quarterfinals was pleasing as well. And it's always nice to see and sneak a couple of Taniwhas in there as well. So all the best for the guys that are playing this weekend, and up the Chiefs.
How good is that? How good's the jersey from Tim before we actually look at his Form 15?
The throwback, that'll be worth a lot of money now. That's retro.
That's brilliant.
That's outstanding.
That is brilliant. As for his Form 15, Mills, so many of the players that he's picked has featured nearly every week. Shaun Stevenson, 10 times this year. Samasoni Tokiaho, Mark Talia, Ardie Savea, they've been ever present. What do you think?
Oh, yes, it's quite a good team that he's named there, actually. But you're starting to see the guys that have had really good seasons, what was spoken about week in, week out. Again, we mentioned Stevenson before. So those guys are featured, and that's why it's impressive when they get to quarterfinals and that they don't just leave that form in the regular sort of season. So pretty good team.
Yeah.
Any holes? Anyone you would have put?
I would have changed Christian the Blues halfback,
Yep.
the Roygaard, he was immense defensively for the Blues, especially in that first 40, which really kept them in that game, because for the first 30, 40 minutes, it was still quite tight. The Blues blew out the second. So, yeah, Finley, I thought he was outstanding.
Yeah, he's in a position where he's competing with a number of other players for an opportunity at the next level. We'll talk about that maybe in the next part, but I think overall he's been a consistent stable for them. They've needed someone. Beauden Barrett arrived, they needed someone to step into the 9 jersey to complement him. He's done that. Really like the way he played on Friday. Every week is a big opportunity for him, though. And so he needs to have another big week against the Crusaders in Christchurch. I would say this to the Crusaders, they were lucky to have Mitch Drummond and Willie Hines back. I think that's critical for them and their chances of winning a title. Some real experience in that position. That's what Finlay will be up against. But he was good, really good.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's what it's going to come down to, right? I don't think it's necessarily the fact that you're motivated to get into the All Blacks and play well. I think the combination, 9 and 10, you got Moonga and Drummond, Weber and McKenzie, really solid. You got Barrett and Christie, and even Depressini and White. So those players in those positions and those combinations in these finals are crucial.
Can I just say one good point for me as well, and you said it to me, Mills, Rieko Ioane.
Yep.
I thought it was his best performance of the season. He looked so sharp every time he got the ball. Accelerating to the outside channel, took the short ball defensively, really strong. KT, I think we've been waiting for one of these performances from Rieko, and everything is still there. I was really impressed. It's what I wanted to see. I was desperate to see it, and we got it.
I think we're starting to see the evolution of him in the 13 jersey. The line running is outstanding. The outside break, he's got that, but it's the passing and the straightening. There's a couple of touches in small spaces that he really, really did put players and set them up on the outside, and I think that's where he sort of stood out for me.
Well, he's one of the first names written down on the All Blacks team sheet, right? And this time next week, we will know what the All Black selectors are thinking ahead of France. But before we get there, we're going to chat to someone who's won the World Cup 2 times. Kieran Read is joining us on the show next.
So you've seen it all, mate, and you've won World Cups, won Super Rugby titles. Is it still there? The fire's still burning?
The fire changes. At the start, it's all about you. What can you do? What can you achieve? As your career goes, you get just as much of a kick out of helping someone in your team, whether they're 19, halfway through their career or whatever. And I remember an outstanding convo from Corey Flynn to some of the young hookers. He said to them, look, you ask me any question, I'll give you the answer that I know, I'll help you train. But it's your job to take this jersey from me. I'm not going to give it to you. That's just an awesome way to set up not only your team you're playing for, but the next generation.
2 of the absolute greats of New Zealand rugby. One is still playing and one gets to watch one of his great mates go to work, and our former All Blacks captain Kieran Read joins us on the program right now. Kieran, thank you so much for giving up your Sunday. We appreciate your time. Sam Whitelock, one of your great mates who you've played such a long time with, has been out with a niggly Achilles. Scott Robertson said yesterday, very unlikely for the semi-final. How concerned should we be as All Blacks fans?
Yeah, it's good evening, everyone. It is a little bit concerning, I think. Like someone like Sam Whitelock, he's not normally on the sideline. He's out there playing 80 minutes no matter when he can. So I think in the nature of the injury too, the fact the area where it is and the Achilles, we don't know. Like these guys on the panel, what an Achilles is like. It can be very niggly. And so, look, at the moment, I think it's time to get back on the field. But yeah, it is a little bit worrying for later in the year.
Kieran, next weekend on the breakdown, we see the first All Black team for 2023. Ian Foster's going to select his side. We're debating our teams. One of the areas of congestion for me is the loose forward combination. From your perspective, is there room for 2 guys, specialist guys, to play number 8? And who are they?
Oh, man, it's a lot of speculation, I guess, now. There's some great players. I think if we look at the squad makeup in the loose forwards, like we're looking at some really talented 7s and not quite got the backup at 8 and 6. So, look, if you go Artie, probably Dalton and Sam Cane are locked in, guaranteed. A few guys who are injured at the moment who I think have got a chance of making the squad. It's probably out of Hoskins and Cullen Grace for me as number 8 backup. I think both of those guys are capable. Cullen, I think, is a man who's, for me, shows more presence and strength around the field, but he hasn't played. So Hoskins has played really well this year, what I've seen him, bits and pieces. So it's, there's there's a lot of makeup. Like Ethan Blackadder is one too, who I thought would, if he'd been playing footy, would be right in the mix. But, we saw him even coming back last night, only getting a few minutes and injured again. So, it's tough for those selectors to pick, and I think they're going to have to pick a few guys injured, which, probably isn't the best thing you want in the World Cup year, but give them a few opportunities in the championship.
Hey, Skip, for you, what type of balance would you like in a 6, 7 and an 8 combination?
I think the key's balance. I think that's what you need in that loose forward trio. I think that's the great ones over the years, and the ones that are playing at the moment have the balance. They have the ball playing number 8 or 6, or if he's playing 7 in South Africa, they play him as a 7, and then they've got a line-out man, they've got a forager, someone who's really hunting the rucks and doing it, So it's getting the balance right. I think that's the key. I think, the unfortunate thing probably now is our best players are very similar in those positions, play a very similar way. So I think finding a way to get a balance, I think there's the option of Scooter at 6, Scooter Barrett at 6, which, I don't personally like too much, but it might just give us the ability to play Artie and the 7 and utilise a bit of difference in our trio.
You talk to us about that, Rito, because in the past we've sort of had sort of a loose, a loosie out wide. We've been able to get them out in the wider channels and have that sort of skill set. Do you see that as something that the All Blacks will go into this Rugby World Cup sort of trying to utilise, or given the nature of where we've been at, play a sort of tighty role?
I hope we don't play a tight role there. I think we've got to play, a pretty exciting brand of footy, to come out against the teams we're going to face, that they strive on that whole physicality, forward-orientated game. So that's not how we're going to win it. But when I come back to the balance, like Scott Barrett gives you a line-out option, I think he should play lock. I think he's a starting lock. And so our 6 becomes that person that, if Ethan Blackadder probably comes right, he's someone who, for me, can probably bring a physicality and bring something that's different to the rest of the loose forwards that we have in our squad.
Kieran, we know that the squad name next week will be a little bit bigger. We're thinking 36 players, and that's not including all the injured players at the moment. So if there is to be a new player in the loose forwards, who have you liked the look of this year? Sammy Penny-Finau's been mentioned many times. So four, you've got Devin Flanders down at the Hurricanes, or would you maybe look at recalling Peter Gus? Do you like him as a player?
Look, they all got great strengths in their own right, those players. I've really been impressed with Sammy Penny-Finau this year. I think, even on just the other night, wasn't it? His physicality, which probably we hadn't seen as much of, but, he showed plenty of that on last night. And, he's been pretty outstanding. He might be, maybe a year or two away from playing. If I look at around the grounds, I think Devin Flanders is someone I've enjoyed and liked as a player, like his size, his pace. He showed, obviously, an outstanding pace last night, but so he's someone who probably just hasn't had the opportunity, but he's got the makings of a great footy player. So look, it'd be hard for them to break in, I think, this year. I guess Billy Harmon's in that same category, isn't he? Like, he slaves away at the Highlanders and probably their best player every week, but Sam Cane, Dalton Popoliti in front of you, it's probably pretty tough to crack.
I have to ask you, a number of players last year put their hand up, Ethan de Groot, Tyrell Lomax, but they're a different level of experience. Rugby World Cups have shown that experience can be absolutely critical when you're dealing with pressure. How hard is it going to be to get that with this group, given the fact that we're transitioning some players who have great form through Super Rugby? Yeah,
look, I think, probably have a look at Fozzie and his group. I think they understand that, so they've got that core group of real experience. Your lock combination, Brody, Sam, you've got Colsey or Cody in that front row to look after the props, because maybe they're thinking that we need our props to be able to be a bit more mobile and get around, which, showed last year when de Groot and Lomax were starting. They did a great job. So, I think the mix is going to be right. I think there's definitely got to be opportunities for these new guys to come in. I think we'll see it potentially not too much in the forward pack, but looking around Super Rugby, there's a couple of players out wide that they've surely put their hand up and, must be close to selection.
Rito, is there anyone looking forward towards the World Cup, opposition-wise, forward packs, you think, geez, we've got to look out for this particular eight?
Probably the two teams we're potentially playing in the quarter, and obviously our first game, France. Like, France have got an outstanding pack, obviously a massive pack, really big boys. So you need to be right on your game and right on your, mental game, to be honest, playing against them. I think they blend really well, and you've got a guy like Aldrich, who's their number 8, who I really like, and he's won, plenty for La Rochelle, played really well in the French jersey too. So he brings a bit of panache, I guess, to their physicality. So they're strong. And Ireland, it could be potential quarterfinalists against us. So they're the team that their forwards aren't big. They're not necessarily going to knock you over, but they're very well drilled. They know where they're going. And so they've got, I think those two are probably the packs that I look at being probably the real strength in World Rugby right now.
Kieran, you're absolutely brilliant. Just before we let you go, do the Crusaders win a 7th straight title with all their injury woes right now?
I hope so. I think they'll definitely have a chance. It's all coming down to Hamilton, I believe. So, I think it's going to be a big game, that final, but obviously 2 big ones coming out this week. But the Crusaders are good enough with all the injuries anyway. They'll turn up.
It's going to be a great semi-final weekend. We're looking forward to it. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and knowledge on forward packs all over the world with us. We really appreciate your time.
No worries at all. Have a good evening.
Wise words from our skip before the Rugby Championship squad announcement. That is live next Sunday on The Breakdown, so make sure you tune in. We'll be live from Ian Foster's club in Te Awamutu. But we decided to give these 3 a task to pick their 36-man Rugby Championship squad. And I tell you what, there's been some trends. So let's go through a few of them. All 3 of you agreed to Mighty Williams will be picked in this team. You've also picked Nepo Laulala Mills.
No, he hasn't.
No, you haven't. You're the only one that hasn't. KT, you have.
Yeah, I just think, he's sort of come in, like we spoke about it earlier on, he's had a bit of a rest, but you need that nail in the scrum, and I think he's that dude to do that for them. So that's why I went with Nepo.
Yeah, I think he's proven that he can go there. He's been out for injury for a long time. His experience in the Crusaders and that too. I like him around the field a bit more too. So I've gone Jaeger there based on limited opportunities so far this year.
To Mighty Williams, Jeff?
Oh, no doubt.
He
plays both sides. Plays both sides. Plenty of potential there. Need to find out how far he can go. We've actually got guys in front of him, and Lomax and De Groot who are playing well. Yep. So that's why I've got Nepo Laulala. It gives them that experience that someone to fall back on. Yep. What was interesting about all of the selection for me, when we talk about 33 players, prop was a position I couldn't get my 6th one if I needed one. And there's a number of positions where there was no clear next standout. Remembering Joe Moody's not available yet. We're not sure whether he's going to be ready. Fletcher Newell's another one. George Bauer has been ruled out. So there could be a window of opportunity for somebody, but there's a number of positions for me that where I found it difficult to find the next guy, the next standout player.
Well, you've all found the next guy, Sammy Penny-Finau. You've gone Ethan Blackadder, which Kieran Read wasn't so sure about just because of the injuries there. It was interesting to hear who he would select, right? Cullen Grace, who's not even out on the field at the moment. Yeah,
well, obviously it depends how bad his dislocation is, but, Rita's obviously a bit closer than we are, so he can't be too far away, you know what I mean? So that's another one, but I just think you need that toughness. And that's why I went with...
Well, when are you going to see Ethan, though? I mean, at what point do you sit there and Kieran Read talked about selecting injured players. I've got a sense you'd take some guys maybe into the squad, even if they're not available for the Rugby Championship. A David Havili, would you have them around the environment, would you?
I'd have David. So, I mean, injuries is a big part, okay? But I'd have a guy like David Havili who's not going to effectively play, but essentially pick someone else in the All Black 15 to actually play. Havili and likes of your Sam Whitelocks, they go in the initial 36. I don't think Blackadder for me goes yet. I think when he gets to the Rugby World Cup, he's in my squad. Yeah, but he needs game time. So I mean, how do you get me? He picked up an injury last night. So if I'm picking a 36, tomorrow. This is the team on Sunday. Blackadder doesn't make it, but does he make my World Cup team? I think he does. So the mix of the locking department and 6 is probably my biggest issue right now in terms of how that sort of works.
Sammy Penny-Finau is the prime example for me, is the fact that if you're going to pick him, does he play? And when does he play? And how much faith do you put in the fact that he's going to step up immediately against Argentina, against South Africa? We will find out, not just with the squad, I think when they name their first team, how much they truly value the form of Super Rugby and where they see this competition right now. Because remembering they've got to trust and believe that the players that they've had in their environment, okay, compared to the players who are playing well in Super Rugby, they've got to weigh those two things up. Yeah. And they've got literally 5 test matches before Rugby World Cup, 4 before they make a decision on a squad. So for Samipeni Finau, where does that opportunity come? And how critical is, if you're trying to get some momentum, how well would he have to play?
Interesting 9 and 10 combinations. All 3 of you picked 3 different 9 combinations. I'm pretty sure you picked 5 of them, Mills, but none of you actually picked Beauden Barrett as a 10.
Did someone change the rules? Did they just pick as many as they wanted? Oh, apparently that's what I did all the time.
I want you to justify your 9 selections, tell everyone who you picked, and also why you didn't pick Beauden Barrett as a 10. You want to start off, Mills?
I think Beauden's... Well, I'll start with the 9s, you know, because I believe... You know, Smith, obviously, we're all in agreement with that. Finlay and Weber, for me, go. But then it gives the other guys an opportunity to actually play in Japan. I think it's still up for grabs for guys for those last 2 spots.
So you take the 3 incumbents?
I think, yeah, you would. You'd take the 3 incumbents and give those guys an opportunity to really play. Realistically, you've got to remember, Foster's only got 5 games to get things right in terms of game plan. You want guys there that you're going to play right through. So why not give them, the other guys that aren't necessarily going to play in Argentina or back into the test in New Zealand, an opportunity to go to Japan and really say, well, hey, I'm playing. Let's see if you can put your hand up.
Who'd you go for as your third halfback?
Whakatawa. Yeah.
So he's not even on that page, and that's the remarkable thing, because I went Cam Roigard. Yeah. And that means I'm having to. And look, I'm tossing up between Finlay Christie and Brad Weber, and both of them been great for their sides and done different things and jobs. But we talk about our point of difference. That's what Sir John Kerwin's always talking about. So whether or not they need to find out and have them in the environment and go, you know what, the easy thing to do is let's bring Brad Weber back in or Finlay Christie back in, because they know exactly how we operate and what we do. They were able to come in and out of the squad last year. It's a hard one for one of those players. It's just an area where there's competition.
I think they've invested so much in Weber, you don't just flick them off. And I think they've got that security with him. But that's why I like Whakatawa. He's totally different. And still, we need him back into that environment too, you know. So
what could Weber do, Mills, that would convince them that he should get the nod over maybe if he's in competition with Christie?
Whakatawa, you mean?
No, I'm talking about Weber.
What about his combination with Damien McKenzie?
And this is where it comes back to. When you're in a coaching environment, well, one, you've got to get results, right? So Argentina is a huge task. You know, you've got to get guys coming back from playing in the final. And Fozzie's already mentioned that. There's no break for the guys that making the final. So, you know, you've got to go actually play. So who do you play? So one, you're trying to build combinations. You've got an injury crisis at the moment in terms of your locking department. You pump guys in there that have been in the environment and make sure, first and foremost, that you get sound and motivation and also confidence within the group that, hey, we're going the right way. Or do you start experimenting and potentially lose those couple? I mean, that's the balance you've got to... So, for me, you go a little bit safer in there and let guys like Whakatawa... I think Whakatawa being something different. Yep. But it hasn't quite worked out in those first couple of sort of, you know, rugby championship games. Those guys have played in the Japanese game where you go, actually, our point of difference now needs to turn to these guys who are playing a totally different style to what's happening here. It's based on the results that we're having at the moment in the rugby championship. Now, when we come to pick the Rugby World Cup, now we know, well, we've got to pick someone else that brings something totally different to the halfbacks we've got.
I like the point you made just before. It's about combinations and being comfortable in those combinations. You don't start mucking around and trying to reinvent the wheel coming in the World Cup. You need those guys comfortable in the spine 9 and 10.
So when it comes to combinations, is that why someone like an Emoni Narawa and a Shaun Stevenson come into this combination? Maybe Damien McKenzie gets a crack and you keep that Chiefs team together. It's been working well for them, hasn't it? And they could have another 2 weeks together.
I think the first place that when you start talking about combinations is who's your fullback going to be? Yep. Who's going to play at fullback? And then you start going, well, Mark Tilley has clearly got to play. So the difference you've got then is Beauden Barrett, is it Damien McKenzie, is it Shaun Stevenson if he makes the squad, is it Will Jordan? And so that combination, the back three and the role that you're wanting to play and do. So for me, I think it's a really difficult one. Lester Whainganuku was in great form, playing remarkably well. He's going to cover the midfield if you want him to do that. he was countless in carrying the ball, whether it was in the tight or on the edge last night, significantly working hard. This is a really difficult selection for them, but there's 36 spots.
Yeah.
I think they can fit all of our guys in.
Isn't this great? Because this is exactly what the selectors will literally be doing sitting
they're
around
not
the
talking
table.
this rubbish. They know exactly what's going on. They know exactly who they want.
This is great. This is perfect. Perfect dress rehearsal for next week. Right, time now for our Musashi power play, and it is Shaun Stevenson this week. Musashi is available at Chemist Warehouse. Mills, could he and Damien McKenzie get an opportunity to continue their combination in black?
Your point in terms of why they're playing together in the combination is on, because the fact is he's in good form, first and foremost. He's stepping up in big games. A big part that he's sort of missed over the years is consistency and his ability to play and stay in big moments. He has shown consistency in terms of, and regular game time also helps. Regular game sort of, I suppose, analysis and also the way the Chiefs are wanting to play has also helped him as well. But he's really built belief amongst his game. Yeah. You tend to get to these sort of matches, the finals, and guys like taper off because they have been sort of, analysed, but he hasn't. He's still finding gaps. He's still finding the skill set, KT, to actually carve players up.
Yeah, and I think he's smoothed a couple of rough edges, and I think you do know better than most being international fullbacks, the timing that he has, that's something that you can't sort of teach. He just naturally has it, and he reminds me of you, Millsy, like with your boot. When you have a one-wood as a boot, it takes the pressure off, and I think him with Damien McKenzie had probably the best kicking combo between the New Zealand teams at the moment.
I like my one wood.
It was a bit of a shake, mate. It was a bit of a shake.
I was on a spiral. None of these drop punts. It was spiralling away into the distance. I want to add to this though. There is nothing that Shaun Stevenson cannot do on the attacking side of the ball. Yeah. He's good enough in the air, he can create, he's got great feet, he's got distribution skills, he's got the kicking game, all of it's there. So the only concern you would ever had is the final and last line of defence. Yeah. And I think he has improved that immeasurably. They just have to have confidence that he can do that job at the back for the All Blacks, and that's a huge responsibility.
Yeah. And I think the confidence to be able to stay in the system. It's a totally different defensive pattern when you're in at the back. You're actually working with your wingers, but he's got appreciation about how to work on his role as a winger and defensive effort down. And when you're at the fullback, you're actually making sure your wingers make all your tackles. And I think a big part of his game and getting the confidence in there. Hey, that's smart, right? You don't make tackles when you're a fullback, mate.
Not a truer word said, brother. Not a truer word said.
You know that. But I also think, for a number of years, he's had to try and prove himself. So improving himself, he's got the skill set, he's got X factor, but he's also hold the ball. That last, where we gave it to Narawa. That's experience now. He's starting to sort of see that.
He's done everything he could possibly do, right? If there's one reason why he doesn't make it, it's because of the competition that he's up against. And you guys have all picked Beauden Barrett at fullback. So he's in competition with Will Jordan, Beauden Barrett, Damien McKenzie potentially, Geordie Barrett, all these guys that can also play fullback.
Yeah, but I think he's still a point of difference. And we just saw that. Like, all the other fullbacks in the comp can't do that, what he just did. So I think that's the difference. And he's actually quite a big dude, tall dude, So that's another thing you have to be wary of going forward.
Well, will he make the All Blacks Rugby Championship squad? What about his teammate, Emoni Narawa? We can't stop raving about him on this program. He's my favourite player to watch right now. Here is his story.
Growing up in Fiji, my dad was a teacher. One of the schools that he was placed at was in one of the islands. So I would catch a ferry by myself for about 2 hours and then take a bus into Suva, play about a 10-minute game, and then I'd come back. During school holidays, we'd go back, got our farms in. My dad loves planting watermelon. And I bought my first rugby boot, selling those kind of things on the side of the road. I've got a little daughter now, Mila. Perspective in life sort of changed when you've got a little family. Yeah, they're my motivation, those are my whys, If I had any advice for any players coming through, sort of run your own race.
Narawa.
Sometimes you sort of compare yourself with other people your age.
He's got pace to burn.
You just see them, they're sort of going up the ranks and you're looking at yourself, you're not sort of cracking it, you're not getting that contract.
Oh, that's a great try. Emoni Narawa.
And sort of trust the process, keep doing the hard yards and it'll come,
One guy who was real competitive, and I used to hate him, but then he was in the All Blacks and I met him and I was like, this guy's a great bloke, was actually Andy Ellis.
But he was such a competitor. Like we just, for like 5 years, we used to just like lock horns and like little pit bulls just go at it, you know, and he never backed down. And then we were in the All Blacks and he like, I think I just had my first boy and he was picking him up. I'm like, oh yeah. But I was like, you know, once you actually get to know the bloke, like he's a great bloke, you know, good. I still, you know, I've had a few yarns to him now. Like, but it's funny because the amount of times people have actually said that to me as well. Oh yeah, she's not a bad bloke. Yeah, I'm like, just because I'm a bit of an asshole on the field doesn't mean I like that off it, you know, like, oh yeah, you're not too bad. I'm like, oh, like, I'm not going to be like I'm on the field. I'm a completely different person. But yeah, Andy.
So Andy Ellis most annoying.
Yeah, he was a little pest, eh? But yeah, got a lot of respect, you know, for what he did and what he's achieved.
Andy Ellis and Dane Coles, who would win the battle of the chat? We know Dane Coles has wonderful chat. He sits down with Joey Wheeler for a full 30 minutes for his exit interview from Super Rugby. That is him. He is done and dusted from the Hurricanes, but hopefully we'll see him back for international rugby this year. He's a big advocate for mental health as well, KT, and it's Men's Health Week coming up next week.
Yeah, it's in JK's spot. I've got to have his mental health groove men there, so represented, doing awesome mahi in that space with the ads and JKs, so get amongst it, get healthy. Yeah, and that Dane Coles feature is coming up right after the breakdown here on Sky Sport 1 at 8:30.
Was he flexing then?
Nah, that's just
He was flexing then, He was 100%.
That's just not included, team. That's just not included.
Look, last week we brought back the trivia section because we've got this wonderful prize to give away, the autobiography and story of Billy Bush. The question that we asked you last week, who did John R4 surpass to become the oldest player in Super Rugby history? Well, these guys didn't have to send through the answer. You did. And here is the answer and our winner. Congratulations to Scott Thompson. You are the winner because the answer was Ben May. There you have it. 39 years, 136 days, plays 39 and 230 days. Shout out to Brad Thorne as well. Right, that is us almost done and dusted. Just quickly pick your finalists. Who makes it?
Oh, I think it's the Chiefs Crusaders up in Hams. Everything road goes through Hamilton.
Chiefs
Mills.
Blues, and I sit on the fence.
Chiefs Blues, Hamilton.
Blues Brumbies. Nah, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Don't
It's
lie.
Chiefs
Nah,
Crusaders. It's Chiefs Crusaders in Hamilton.
100% Chiefs Crusaders, but the Blues are going to be watching this and they are going to use this to their advantage. Best of luck, and we will see you back here for the All Blacks first squad announcement of the year live on the breakdown next Sunday. Ka kite anō.
Day here in the mighty Waikato for quarterfinal rugby. Nice handling from the Chiefs. Stevenson brings over across for Narawa. Emoni's in. And the Chiefs march into the semi-finals.
Welcome to Orange Theory Stadium for the third of the quarterfinals in Super Rugby. Intercept. Oh, that's a giveaway. And a try coming out for Ravu Tamunda. Just like that. The Crusaders are into yet another semi-final.